So you can take that away. As much as I love a microphone. Thank you. Just use what I was using. This is a spare. This is a small one. Now, I just wanted to ask a question. Do you need any, in terms of, do I just wait over there or should I be sitting here all the time? What do you have? Yeah. But like, for example, if it's after this, should I wait because I have to play during this return? Yeah. I should wait here because then if everyone's moving silent. Yeah, I can put the idea. Like, if you're sure. So I'll stay for this. This one then? Yeah. And then I'll come back after that. Yeah, I might ask. Chris, I'm gonna play some music and I'll stop when you come up here, or what do you want me to do? It says music interlude.
For that.
So after the morning message, I'll start playing something.
Yeah, sure.
And then I'm just ad-libbing. I'm making up, so you can just look at me.
Oh, sure, yeah, because I'll be wandering up.
Yeah, and when you wander up,
yeah,
that's my cue to end.
I'll like.
Okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Sounds good.
I just wanted to know it was.
Yeah.
Bonjour, mes amis. Welcome everyone to our weekly, boy, I need to wake up. Welcome everyone to our weekly worship service of the First Unitarian Congregation of Ottawa. Whether you are here in Worship Hall or watching from wherever you may be, you are welcome. I'm the Reverend Eric, this congregation's lead pastor, and I'm thrilled to be with all of you this morning as we bask in the sunshine and sometimes rain of autumn. Was anybody else surprised on the way to get here? It took a little trickier. And the detour on Cleary is coming. I don't know exactly when. Brent, do we have a closer date? We're waiting for the city. That's sort of the theme of life, isn't it? This morning, we welcome Thalia as she fills in while our music director, Jen, is on vacation, singing with another of her choirs in France. No jealousy here. And we are joined by Chris, our worship associate, this morning. You'll notice that we're continuing to start with our young ones back in the hall as well. Please don't mind if any of them or anyone of any age gets up and moves quietly around the space. Thalia, Anne, and Phil, I believe you are going to lead us in our opening song. Please rise, will you, as willing or able everyone, as they step forward. Oh, you brought some help. Fabulous. You can rise as well if you're willing as we sing together our opening song, Come, Come, Whoever You Are.
And, can you hear me? We are going to sing it as a round. So what that means is that we will all sing the first verse together. And then when we start the second verse, Phil and Anne and Chris will start. And then 4 beats later, this half will start. Okay? And maybe we'll wave our hand when we start or something. Number 188, Come, Come, Whoever You Are. Thank you, you were great.
Thank you, singers. That was really fun. Good morning, everyone, and once again, welcome to the First Unitarian Congregation of Ottawa. My name is Chris, and I'm delighted to be your worship associate this morning. Whether you're taking part in this worship celebration from home or wherever else you may be, you are welcome here. We'd like to acknowledge that FirstU campus is located on traditional, unsurrendered, and unceded Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory, and that the work of reconciliation is a responsibility for our congregation and for all Canadians. Our goal is to educate ourselves and all who have the capacity to understand, to be of service to those who are at risk, and to advocate for justice. Please take care and take advantage of online opportunities at FirstU to stay in touch during this protracted pandemic. If you're new to FirstU and would like to learn more about us, please contact us through email at welcome@firstunitarianottawa.ca. And if you're right here in Worship Hall with us this morning and you'd like more info, you can find that at the welcome table at the back of the pews. And now we have Brent from our board to highlight some of the announcements for today. Hi.
Good name?
My name is Chris. What's your name? What is it? Teddy.
Good morning, everyone. This. And good morning, Teddy. So mark your calendars for a campus planning town hall on Wednesday, October 26th at 7 o'clock on Zoom. We will be updating everyone on different campus planning developments since the May annual gathering. Details to follow. We'll have an information package and there'll be lots of time for answering questions from the congregation. The Fall Fair is back. Mark your calendars for Saturday, November 12th for this important fundraiser to the congregation. Check out the Fall Fair donations page on our website for what donations we're looking for and for volunteer opportunities where you can help out. At this point, we're looking for people who might be willing to spend time outside in possibly colder weather. So check the EUU for details and the website for details on that. Also make sure on your calendar you have next Sunday, you plan to come to our installation ceremony for Reverend Eric at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You can come in person or you can attend, it'll be live streamed, and we have additional capacity for people, so we really hope to see everyone come for that. Finally, tomorrow, our Giving Up Racism series continues at 7 o'clock on Zoom. The topic will be on the history of colonization. The details for all of these are in the EUU. Please make sure that to look through all your EUU. There's an awful lot of stuff going on. If you need to receive a copy of the EUU, it's also available on our website, but you can actually get, you can subscribe by emailing welcome@firstunitarianottawa.ca. And now here's Donna for announcements from the Environmental Action Group.
Thank you, Brent. And while you're in the EUU, click over to the Climate Action page. There's lots of news and events, including a workshop offered by the Fellowship with Robin McDonald. Ecology Ottawa has released its candidates' answers to the Eco Survey. Voted. Yet local governments have influence over about 50% of greenhouse gas emissions in Canada, including things like transit, land use planning, waste reduction, climate change. So the candidates we're going to elect in a week and a day will represent us and make vital decisions as to the scale, like how much we do, and the pace, how quickly we move to slow climate change over the next 4 years. So choose carefully. I know lots of you have already voted, and encourage others to do so. Thanks.
Thank you, Donna. During the continuing pandemic, we encourage you to sign up to receive the EUU, as I mentioned before, our weekly email newsletter. That's what EUU means. Check our Facebook and Instagram pages and our web page for notices and updates. Our calendar continues to be as full as ever, though many of our activities still take place online. At the back, at the welcome table, there's a little form to fill out where you can check a little box and say, I would like to receive the EUU. There is Mary waving them there. So whatever your heritage, whatever your faith, whomever you love, and however you identify, today you are part of our spiritual community. Welcome.
I'm going to light the chalice, or we're going to light our chalice in just a minute, but I forgot to ask if anyone would be willing to help out. Is there someone of any age who would like to help us light our chalice this morning? I'll say some words and then we'll see. How about that? This morning we light our chalice to these words from Orlando Brugnola. Flame, friend of our most ancient ancestors, we kindle you now to make you visible in this time. Yet in truth you burn always, in the unique worth of each and every person, in the imagination, in the turning of the heart to sorrow or joy, in the call to hope, and in the call to justice. Burn bright before us, burn bright within us. Thank you. Our chalice is lit. Come, let us worship together. Let's see if, is this working? Can we use the handheld? Are we good? Not yet? Who here, oh, there we go. Who here, I'm going to stay to this part, keep my mask off. Who here knows the story of stone soup? That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. So you don't need me to tell you the story. You know the story. But I saw there were a couple people who didn't raise their hands, so we're going to tell the story. And some of you, I hope, will help out. There are story devices scattered around the room. If you have one, I think you probably know what it is. Long ago, in no particular land, could be any place on our beautiful planet, there were some weary travelers. Their feet were sore, but what was worse, their bellies were empty. They were hungry. They had been traveling for days, and they had days to go. When they came to a village in the middle of the afternoon, we said, let's stay with these people tonight, rest our weary feet, and see if we might find food for a meal. The villagers had been wary of people from outside, outsiders, strangers, people they did not know. And so they all went inside and shuttered their windows, closed their doors. And so when the visitors got to the travelers got to the town, it looked like there were no people. But things were swept. The weeds were not growing up under the bush, under the trees, so people were taking care of this land. They had to be somewhere. They said, what do we do? And one of them said, well, maybe it's time to make stone soup. And they put a rock in a kettle, and the kettle on a little fire they made. And the people looking out their windows, because they were curious, they weren't dead. What are they doing? They just put a rock in a soup pot, and now they're bringing some water. What is this? So they opened the windows, and the villagers sort of noticed this. You know how that happens? And they said, these stones are going to make a great soup, but whoa, it would be really good if we had an onion or two. Is there an onion or two in the house? There we go. Yeah, and maybe a potato, and maybe some garlic, or some carrots, or a sweet potato, or a rutabaga, or anything. Come on down. If you've got something, bring it down. If only making soup was this easy, huh? Oh, and some kale. If we had some purple organic kale, that would be great. We'll cook that down. A parsnip, and another tomato, and a yellow carrot, and another yellow carrot, and an orange carrot, and an almost red carrot. Oh, this is gonna taste really good. Oh, another onion. Yeah. This is the way I make soup. Who needs knives, right? Put it all in. Put it all in. Thank you, Chris. And the villagers did what you just did. They brought their food and they stayed, and they realized each of them may not have had much. They may not have had much to share, but each of them had something to share. And when they came together and put things in the pot, they smiled just like that. And so the village had a feast and their first taste of stone soup. Thank you for helping me tell the story. And now let us sing our young ones out to the rest of their important day.
You go.
Speak up. All right, we're going to sing the young ones out to the rest of their important day with the song. I don't know if it's up on the screen or not. You know, that's probably the third or fourth time we've done this, and I forgot to ask you, as the kids leave, if the people here would make a little ark, if you would just raise your hand. And it only took me a month to remember to ask you to do that. Chris, can you help salvage this worship service with some centering words?
Now that we all know, we can help remember. So our centering words today are by Rebecca Del Rio. Come new to this day. Remove the rigid overcoat of experience, the notion of knowing, the beliefs that cloud your vision. Leave behind the stories of your life, spit out the sour taste of unmet expectation. Let the stale scent of what-ifs waft back into the swamp of your useless fears. Arrive curious, without the armor of certainty, the plans and planned results of the life you've imagined. Live the life that chooses you, new every breath, every blink of your astonished eyes.
Thank you, Chris. At this time, each week, we take a few moments to pause and sit together. I have before me some glass beads, little glass stones, and a bowl of water. We drop into the water these little stones, and the ripples expand. Now, this is a small bowl, but the ripples extend out beyond that, into and beyond this, our community of faith. I drop a stone this morning for Nancy, who died at the beginning of this month at Wellington House. She will be lovingly missed. And also a stone for a friend of this congregation, Elder Verna. She wrote this in response to our invitation to come next week to my installation. It would be a great honor to attend your inauguration. I've been thinking a lot about it. Unfortunately, I have to send my regrets. I had major surgery at the beginning of the month and was hoping that I would be out and about, but I was given orders to stay quiet for the next couple of weeks, including not being able to drive my car. This is torture for me. I send you my apologies and will be sending you good wishes in a spirit to you on the special new journey of the congregation. Elder Verna, we thank you, and you are with us in spirit. And a stone as well for all that remains in the silent sanctuary of our hearts this morning, and for those in need around the world. Let us join together in a few moments of stillness and quiet meditation. Thank you, Thalia. Chris and I have two readings for you this morning. The first is titled, "No One Needs a Church," and it's adapted from my colleague Sharon Wiley. I'm spiritual but not religious, they say, and I'm not comfortable with institutionalized religion. That's all well and good, but I get phone calls from strangers hoping I'll visit a dying father, and emails from strangers requesting prayers. I've seen people crying in the grocery store and the mall parking lot. I consider stepping in, but people say they don't want ministers these days, and I already have congregants I never visit. My heart is a wellspring of grief for all that I cannot do and all I cannot serve. And saying no sometimes is the only way I can be sure that I can say yes when I need to. I'm homebound, they say, and I'm lonely. Nobody wants a minister until suddenly they do. And nobody wants a church until a loved one is dying or dead, and suddenly it would be nice to have someone give the eulogy and people to bring the casseroles and friends to sit and cry with. We need roving gangs of chaplains patrolling the streets, accompanying the grieving and witnessing the suffering, answering 24-hour hotlines and churches staffed with ministers to spare. But I'm spiritual but not religious, they say, and I'm not comfortable with organized religion. There is little funding for those who companion and mirror and witness the world's pain and suffering and joy. And so we companion and mirror and witness pain and suffering and joy. We see the hurting and yearning and confusion. Where can I find people to connect with, they ask, and who can I talk to about my grief? Who will visit my dying father, and who will pray for me? I know the answers to these questions, uneasy answers. It's hard to make withdrawals when you've made no deposits, and that which we do not nurture dies.
Our second reading is Loaves and Fishes by David White. This is not the age of information. This is not the age of information. Forget the news and the radio and the blurred screen. This is the time of loaves and fishes. People are hungry, and one good word is bread for 1,000.
I've only been alive 57 years, but it seems to me every age, every year is the age of loaves and fishes. That sort of need will never go away. Several weeks ago now, I mentioned that the senior minister at my former congregation had been let go. That's overstating things just a bit. She's on paid administrative leave, and yet it began just as the church year was beginning to ramp up. The congregation is reeling. There was no overt ministerial misconduct. I want to be clear about that. And I've mentioned this, and some of you have been afraid that when I've said there have been a lot of phone calls, maybe I left an inference unspoken. I want to dispel any rumors. They're not asking for me back, and I would not entertain doing so. The reason I mention the news from Columbus, Ohio again is that it comes as a sobering note as I have been thinking about and making preparations for my installation, our installation, a week from Sunday afternoon. The reading I shared earlier from my colleague Sharon Wiley is something she wrote several years ago now. I've gone back to it again and again. The subtitle is Lament of the Ministers. I didn't want that in the program, but I have to fess up. This is the first time I've shared that piece with the congregation I've served. I want to pull back the veil even a little bit this morning. Days before I packed up my things and drove a small cargo van from outside Minneapolis, Minnesota to California to attend seminary in Berkeley, the young adult group I was part of in Minneapolis hosted Opus, our denomination's annual continental conference for young adults, those in their 20s and 30s. There's some stragglers who stayed around for a day or two after the event actually helped me pack that little van. During the conference at lunchtime one day, I saw one of the two Unitarian Universalist ministers there weeping openly, bawling really, sobbing, under the shoulder of a young woman who belonged to the congregation he served. What's going on? I thought, this isn't appropriate. I learned later that word had just arrived that a teen of that congregation, someone the pastor had worked with and counseled closely, had been killed in a car accident. Whether that minister's sobbing was appropriate or not on the shoulder of his parishioner, his grief was real. And when we grieve, as I trust you know, we are not necessarily the ones doing the steering of our lives. A few years later, fast forwarding to the year between seminary and starting my first ministerial job, I worked for our congregation in Oakland, California as its administrative assistant. This was before the internet was what it is today. Only the church administrator and I had computers linked to anything other than a printer. When one of the ministers, a husband and wife co-ministry team, wanted to send an email, they typed it up, printed it out to me, and handed it to me to retype and send out. That happened once a week. How times change. Thinking back to that year, working for and with Rob and Jan Eller Isaacs, that co-ministry team, I'm more and more grateful for the gift of their counsel and example. Then one day in a huff, the congregant who was paying the congregation's internet bill, I want you to hear that, the congregant that was paying for the church's internet, got in a huff and decided to let the service drop without telling anyone. I did tell you that this was centuries ago and that the congregation was not a paragon of having its institutional act together, didn't I? I distinctly remember Reverend Rob calling the man and saying, "Glenn, I love you, but this is not okay." That's the way he started the conversation. At another point that year, Rob told me something else that has stayed with me ever since. He said something to the effect of, "Our congregations never know how much we come to love them, and they probably never should." That one has stayed with me, at least in part because of how little I liked the last part. Although over the years I've come to appreciate the truth and the wisdom of it. You see, I may tell stories of my life here in front of you, but this is never about me. I'm simply offering up the best of what I can to share with you, and life has always taught me more than books have. It's never about me. It's about what you and I can do together, what you can be, and what you can bring to life. A few years ago, I took part in the installation of a former co-worker. Reverend Lane Campbell had been the religious educator at the church in Columbus, Ohio, where I served as associate minister. We worked together closely every day for 5 years. Technically, at the end, I was Lane's supervisor, but only technically. We were colleagues, and I expect I learned more from her than she learned from me. As it happened, Lane left Columbus to be the called minister at a congregation in Rochester, New York, where I had served an interim ministry year just before coming to Columbus. It's a small world and a much smaller denomination, friends. So I was honored when she asked me to offer the charge to the congregation at her installation. It was wonderful to be back in Rochester and to see how much the city had changed and to take in the renovations the congregation had made to its beautiful worship space, a worship space that needed all of those restorations. And the year I spent at the First Unitarian Church of Rochester turned out to be a very important one for the congregation, a transitional year. For over a century, that congregation and the First Unitarian Church of Rochester had lived just 4 blocks apart on the same downtown street. Each thrived with over 400 people in the pews on Sunday. And then came white flight from downtown Rochester, and the Unitarians moved out to the edge of town. Still technically in the city, but they moved to the suburbs, in effect. And a story mirrored throughout the states. The more suburban church grew, and the predominantly white downtown church soon was a ghost of its former self. From 400 every Sunday morning, now maybe 70 attended. Most of the classrooms upstairs, they're downstairs here, but they remained completely empty. There were no more than a handful or two of children. But because of its unique architecture, a brick 8-sided building, gorgeous, the Universalists found they could not sell their church. And because they were not what they had been, they could not afford to move elsewhere without doing so. A depressed congregation is a terrible thing. And there they were, with me for a year, between settled ministers. Their search team and I created a series of dessert and conversation evenings, and something magical happened. People began hearing one another say positive things about being part of their church community. And those conversations became the start, the catalyst for possibility, new life. And 10 years after those meetings, the congregation was ready to call a young, ambitious minister who was more than ready to shepherd some of those possibilities to life. This is what I said, in part, in closing to my former congregation at Reverend Lane's installation there. My sense is that you as a congregation are in need of a new chapter in your long history. Truth is that you are more than this building and your history. You always have been. You have an opportunity now to create some new memories, to see yourself anew, and to be bold in doing so. If it sounds difficult to stretch beyond familiar patterns or habits, well, so what? In the course of human history, so much would have proved impossible if the effort required hadn't been difficult. Share your hopes, dreams, and fears with Reverend Lane, I continued, and also with each other. See what shared possibilities emerge. And I continued this way. Now that might be the natural note to end on, but there's something else I have to say. I have worked with Lane every day for the past 5 years, and she is happier now than I've ever seen her. Yes, this is largely because she got married this last summer, but it is not only due to that happy truth. She's also falling in love with you. Yes, I know, it's complicated. And I closed with these words. The time is now to see what you can next become, to see what new memories you, with your new minister, can create. Now, I could transition from that happy day, 4 years ago, November 18th, to our installation here in this space next Sunday afternoon, about how we would be wise to let our mutual love be our truest and surest guide. But there's at least one more thing I have to say. Seatbelts on, people. How many of you have ever made or eaten stone soup? How many of you, oh, there's some hands in the back. If your experience is different from mine, let's talk, but after the service, okay? I was in college in St. Paul, Minnesota, probably my third or fourth year, and a number of us realized that we all had Unitarian upbringing, so we said, let's get everyone together who knows even what Unitarian Universalism is, and let's have stone soup. So we took over one of the lounges in the residence hall. I made some bread. People brought everything in, and we had soup. It was awful. Pesto and rutabagas should never be put together. Now, maybe it's different here in Canada's capital city, but that soup did away with any thoughts I ever had of becoming an anarchist. A little leadership can be a very good thing. There's a reason we have cookbooks and recipes. That's the laugh line this morning. Faith communities need to know how to be tender with one another and those beyond their walls. Faith communities also need to know how and when to be bold. And it helps to have some direction in how they do each. And I'll close in this vein. A few weeks back, I mentioned the covenant that you and I will formally make during the installation ceremony next Sunday afternoon. And I passed out copies of 2 sample covenants. And I asked you for feedback. The following is from one such response. Hi, Eric. I believe you commented that the samples talk about how, but not why. Since you asked for input, here's mine. After reading both the sample covenant and the one with your name in it, I noticed that neither bears the congregation's mission statement. It hangs on the wall, but we don't refer to it very much. In fact, I can't find it on our website or in the EUU, our Friday email blast, as was mentioned earlier. I suggest that our mission statement be incorporated into your installation along with a sentence from one of the samples. We do have a statement of goal with regard to reconciliation in the EUU, and if the congregation's mission statement is still relevant, perhaps we should be paying more attention to it. And that member closed with these words, "Thanks for the opportunity to comment. In the long run, we'll promise and you'll promise, and we'll all try to be nice as the years go on." Second laugh line. For those who don't have it on the tip of their tongue, this is the mission statement of this congregation. This congregation's mission is to kindle the light within and inspire courage to nurture the web of life and to create a just and compassionate world. Now that's a darn fine mission statement. Whether we tweak it or not, the heart of it rings true and rings strong. Let's see if we can't live into it together. So may it be. Amen.
Thank you, Talia. This congregation has a long history of care, vitality, and bringing people together to move the arc of justice forward. We have been able to live into our hopes and dreams because of the generosity of those within and beyond this community. Whether you are here in Worship Hall or anywhere else at all, you are part of this community. To make a gift in support of the work of this congregation, you don't need to use the baskets that will soon be making their way among our pews. Wherever you are invited to go to our website or to contact our finance manager to find out how to make a donation or to keep up with your pledge. Our gifts are freely given and gratefully received. We dedicate these gifts to the work of this congregation of faith, serving human wholeness, caring for the planet, upholding religious freedom, welcoming the stranger, and loving one another. And as we are in the midst of the congregation's annual pledge drive, where's Terry? Terry has an update for all of us. Terry.
Thank you, Chris, and good morning, everyone. I hope you're like me. I love the anecdotes, the stories Reverend Eric tells. They tie in so beautifully to what's happening with this congregation. If you kind of read between the lines, you can see where we are today. The pledge campaign, in fact, is this community's stone soup exercise. Our cook pot, which is the pledge box that sits at the back of the sanctuary, is to be filled up actually with pieces of celery. That's a pun. Oh, I know it's a bad pun, but the practice of giving regularly and intentionally helps us grow in faith and to mature spiritually. It requires us to put our own needs and wants into proper perspective, to set aside our own interests for the sake of our spiritual community. Generosity is a tool that shapes our hearts, and through the spiritual discipline of giving, our hearts become one with our community and our faith grows. Pledging helps us embrace the spiritual discipline of regular, faithful giving. I think if you go to the next slide, the update will show you that what our progress is. The good part of that is that 45% of our financial goal has been met already. The downside is that only 22% of us have actually pledged. So I think that your pledge actually matters more to us than the amount of your pledge. Think about it in that context. We need to get as many people committing to this faith community as we can. So whether your pledge is $10 or $100 or $1,000, it's important to us that you pledge. We just want to know that you are a part of this faith community. The next slide, please, Julia. So, yeah, that's the point I'm trying to make. Imagine what would happen if we got 80% of us actually pledging, meeting that target. Now, over the last number of years, we haven't quite made it to 80. We've been on a slight decline, so I'm encouraging you to go to the back, pick up a pledge form if you haven't done it already, or go online and go to firstunitarianottawa.ca. First, yes. And go to donations. You'll find the information about the pledge campaign. And I think we have another slide, Julie, if you would. So yes, so if you haven't made your pledge, do so. And also, if you would encourage other participants to pledge. Again, I want to encourage you that it's not the amount of your pledge necessarily that's important to us. We really want to know that you're committed to this faith community, and the amount of your pledge doesn't matter, but just please give us a pledge. It's an indication of what your promise is for your financial commitment for next year. So thank you.
Thanks, Terry. And now, as our offering baskets are passed among us, please rise as you are willing and able as we join together for our closing hymn, For All That Is Our Life, number 128, in our gray hymnal.
Please be seated. You know, I didn't say so earlier, but the round that we sang earlier, I love rounds. And it's been 2.5 years since I've even heard one. Thank you. Before we close this time of worship and reflection, a reminder that our online fellowship hour will begin at 11:30. For those who would like to access fellowship hour here in this building, you can do so in the lounge out those doors and around to your right. There you'll be able to connect with all those joining fellowship hour from home and have discussions with those joining in person. We extinguish our chalice this morning to these words adapted from those by Kristen L. Harper. I do not wish to breathe another breath if it is not shared with others. The breath of life is not mine alone. I brought myself to be with you, hoping that by inhaling the compassion, the courage, the hope found here, I can exhale the fear, the selfishness, the separateness I keep so close to my skin. I cannot live another moment, at least not one of joy, unless you and I find our oneness somewhere among each other, somewhere between the noise, somewhere within the silence of the next breath. Our chalice is extinguished, but the spark of our connections and our faith remains. Talia, will you bless us in song? And the choir, once more. Reach out your hands to those near you, those in this space and those beyond this morning. As we prepare now to leave this space and this time, may our hearts remain open and our minds remain clear. We are people of reason and heart, and memory and hope as well. May we also always remain people of love, providing a place in this world for our spirit, a place that can simply be called home. And now, as we return to the challenge of helping the world come alive in love, let us go forward with peace, my friends. Go in peace.